pleasure to welcome you to the Global Resilient Cities and World Bank Cities on the Front Line COVID-19 Coronavirus Speaker Series. This is our 16th session, so ending a fourth month of discussions here on how to respond to the coronavirus with resilience. This session is on digital and green recovery. And before I turn the floor over to Francis to introduce our speakers tonight who are coming to us from Barcelona, I'm going to remind everyone of the ground rules for this session. This is a practitioner's session, and this is intended for cities and partners of cities who are helping them to respond and recover from this crisis. These sessions are not on the record, and we ask that if you do want to take any of the information that you hear tonight and publish it, that you reach out and get in touch with us. We're really thrilled with the response that we have for tonight's session. We have over 300 registered guests, so we ask that if you have a question, you use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to pose questions. We will also, during the course of the session, pose a few questions back to you as the audience. So please click on those questions, answer them so that we understand better from you what you're interested in learning about and what issues you're grappling with in the face of this pandemic. And with that, I want to turn the floor over to Francis from the World Bank, who will introduce our speakers.
Lauren, better than me, I think Sami, our director, is going to introduce Laia and Miquel, since they're good friends.
Thanks a lot, Lauren and Francis. And it's a pleasure to be here in today's Cities on the Front Line, focus on digital and green recovery with a deep dive in the case of Barcelona. It's a real pleasure to welcome our two speakers today, Laia Bonet, the Deputy Mayor of Barcelona, for the 2030 Agenda for Digital Transformations and International Relations. And she will set the stage by giving us an overview of Barcelona's response to the COVID-19 crisis and touch upon some of the main challenges encountered. And then Miquel Rodríguez Planas, who's the Commissioner for the 2030 Agenda at Barcelona City Council, will go deeper into the response with a focus on restarting the economy, in particular tourism, through digital transformation and greening. And it's a real pleasure for me to welcome Barcelona, which is a city that we have been collaborating with for a long period of time. We've been having a memorandum of understanding for collaboration on knowledge sharing with the city of Barcelona, and specifically on issues that matter to our two institutions, which are basically the agenda of inclusive urbanization and smart cities. So we've been working with the city for the past few years, and we've renewed the MOU that we've signed, that I had the pleasure of signing with Laia last year in 2019 in the Smart Cities Expo in Barcelona. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Laia and Miquel to join us, and I know that subsequently they'll be joined by Ares Gabas, who's the City Resilience Officer for Barcelona. So with that, there's about 35 minutes of presentation for both Laia and Miquel, after which the Q&A session will open. So with that, I hope everyone, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy the talk, and let me pass the floor to Laia and welcoming her. Laia, please.
Thank you, and Lauren, for the invitation. It's a real pleasure for Barcelona to contribute to this series of webinars on the impact of and management of COVID in cities around the world. In Barcelona, we are at a time when we have already overcome the most serious part of the health emergency, and we are facing the recovery phase. In this sense, today we will share with you how we are working from the City Council for a citywide consensus for an inclusive, green and digital way out of the crisis, and what plans we are launching to achieve a more resilient city based on the digitalization and sustainability. I myself will talk to you about the City Pact and the digitalization plans, which already existed, but which we have reformulated in the light of the crisis, and the Commissioner for the 2030 Agenda will present the Barcelona Sustainability Plan. Sorry. Today, we are also accompanied by Aris Gabà, as you said, Sameh, a resilience officer of Barcelona City Council, who acts as a focal point with the Global Resilient Cities Network. So let me start by saying that Barcelona, like so many other cities in the world, has been severely affected by the COVID pandemic. In terms of health, as of 23rd June, more than 15,000 accumulated cases and nearly 3,500 deaths have been detected in Barcelona since the beginning of the pandemic. Obviously, in a context of global lockdown and mobility restrictions, tourism and small businesses have been seriously affected. These two activities, also linked to the world of hospitality and catering, are two main pillars of the city's economy, which has been badly affected by the crisis. During the spring months, all international conferences have been postponed or cancelled, and traffic at Barcelona airport has been reduced by 65%. As a result, in terms of employment, we have seen an increase of almost 30% in unemployment. Obviously, the drop in economic activity has resulted in a decline of 300 million euros in a municipal budget of just over 3,000 million euros. Therefore, a fall of 10% of the revenue that supports the budget. And that coincides with the need of significantly increased spending to tackle the crisis. The pandemic, in fact, has already changed the priorities of the municipal government, which was elected in May 2019, so almost 1 year ago, and its term ends in May 2023. So in the coming months and years, we will have to dedicate ourselves to mitigating the effects of the pandemic and taking advantage of the crisis to generate a more sustainable and equitable urban model. In this context, the city government is working in three main directions. The first one, addressing the social emergency, but also at the same time reactivating our local economy, and finally creating an urban model more resilient and adapted to the new normal. The crisis represents an opportunity for a recovery that will enable the transition to a more sustainable city model, which allow us to rectify some of the most worrying aspects of the city's evolution in recent years. We need a more sustainable tourism model, more equitable and green forms of mobility, affordable and dignified housing for all, and harnessing the full potential of digitalization through economic revitalization and social inclusion. But taking advantage of a crisis of the current dimensions to move towards a different city model requires a broad consensus among the city's political, social, and economic stakeholders. Barcelona's government has therefore created the Pacte per Barcelona, so the Barcelona Deal, which gathers together more than 200 entities and organizations of the city, which are working together in defining the key measures to overcome the economic crisis over the next year and a half. They are also expected to agree on the budget needed to achieve such goals. This Barcelona Deal has been structured in 4 thematic groups, working groups. Economy, the first one, with a sub-working group on digital economy, urban model, social rights, and the last one, culture, science, education, and international relations. Over these thematic groups, there is the main working group of the Barcelona Deal, made up of the major socioeconomic stakeholders of the city. Each thematic working group then passes on the 2-3 most relevant measures to the main working group, and this is responsible for gathering the proposed actions and weighing up their relevance so as to create a city-wide plan. As I said at the beginning, One of the lessons of this crisis on which we will have to build the new normal is the major economic dependence that the city has on tourism. In fact, it's also an opportunity to rethink the model of tourism movement and to begin at the same time to resolve the tensions that our current model presents between the economic activity and livability of the city. Barcelona has experienced firsthand the so-called city break, the urban factor in the capacity to attract tourists, which has generated major economic prosperity, but also dependence and therefore little resilience, such as this crisis is proving. The new normal, in a context in which mobility between countries will be reduced, we are working with the province and the region to promote a model of domestic tourism based on culture, sport, wine tourism, or gastronomic tourism in a way that contributes to the social and cultural development of Barcelona and the whole region. In fact, this model of sustainable tourism also involves increasingly integrating the peri-urban and rural territories that surround Barcelona into a cooperation strategy at metropolitan and regional level. This change in model, more sustainable and territorial balance, must go hand in hand with the diversification of the city's economy that will allow us to transition to a digital and green model. In this sense, we are setting in motion a digital transition plan that should allow us to digitalize the economic and commercial fabric of the city and place the benefits of digitalization at the service of everyone. It is worth noting that this plan is based on a reality that we have seen during the months of lockdown, and that the digital divide is a persistent reality that hinders access to rights and opportunities for already vulnerable groups, people with low incomes, with lower educational levels, women, the elderly, or those living in neighborhoods with a lack of infrastructure. Therefore, a first goal is to reduce the digital divide. The second goal is to promote urban innovation, to find different ways of tackling problems, to find effective, inclusive, and green solutions. We know that in many cases, this should include digital solutions. And it is therefore one of the goals we promote in terms of digital transition. The third goal is evidently to enable the digitalization of the city's economic fabric, from e-commerce of the local retail to the promotion of remote work that allows us to reduce commuting and therefore carbon emissions, among other things. In the next slides, I will explain the actions we are already developing, but let me mention the main areas of work and tools we have to achieve this goal. First of all, we count on the Barcelona Urban Innovation Agency, the Barcelona Institute of Technology and Habitat. Secondly, with the municipal network of digital fab labs, which are facilities rooted in cities' neighborhoods, which during the pandemic have allowed us to accelerate the digital production of personal protective equipment. And maybe I would underline as a third goal, we have also the cross-cutting work with the economic area of the city council to boost digitalization of local retail, as we will now see. Thirdly, we are beginning to prepare plans for the deployment of technologies such as the Internet of Things, 5G, artificial intelligence, and blockchain to improve the provision of public services. And finally, we have a line of work for defending and promoting digital rights that, through local regulation and political impact on other administrations, has allowed us to ensure the development and ethical use of technology in the city. As I said, during the weeks of lockdown, we have seen stronger than ever that access to internet, digital services, and having the necessary digital education to know how to take advantage of them are increasingly clearly part of the conditions for a dignified life and equal opportunities. For example, in access to employment, education, and even public services. Here, we still have a lot of work to do. And the first thing we need is to know the magnitude of the situation. In Barcelona, we have a 2016 report that indicated that 96% of the population did have access to the internet, although there was a variation of 30% depending on neighborhood. Now, we also know that household connection is not the only relevant factor. The number of computers in homes in relation to the number of household members, for instance, is also important. Therefore, we need to update and extensive information regarding the digital divide, which should allow us to produce a good action plan in this sense. And this is the reason why we will be doing in Barcelona in the coming months this plan, and gathering this information. In the meantime, we also know that there are other policies which do not necessarily depend on us, but which need to be promoted. This is why we will be working with regional and national governments and with European institutions to think of a digital good, like the social good in energy supplies, but with the internet. By increasing the number of electronic devices that can be loaned to students during the course, in digital training programs, or the promotion for women's scientific and technological educations, among others. Another goal I mentioned before is the digitalization of the economy. In the post-COVID context, we are particularly concerned about the digitalization of the most affected sectors, and in particular, local retail. Local retail is essential for Barcelona to continue as we know it. And it is clear that one of the main challenges facing the sector is competition with e-commerce, even more so after all we have experienced in recent months. From the City Council, we have implemented all these measures to help the sector to be able to compete in the current context. We are putting the city model to the test, and also a high percentage of jobs in the city. The plan provides for 500,000 euros for digital transformation of local retail and restaurants, which represents a 66% increase compared with last year. The City Council will provide technical support for SMEs to produce their own digitalization plan for companies in the Barcelona metropolitan area with up to 10 employees. And 52 online courses will be offered on digital tools for employees. In parallel, a city study will be carried out on the needs of local retail, and with the results obtained, the three elements I've just mentioned will be reviewed. Finally, we are working on being able to have a public online market for shops in the city after the next summer. With regard to the immediate measures to put urban innovation at the forefront of recovery, from Barcelona we have launched an open innovation process that puts €500,000 at the service of two key goals for recovery: to reactivate the local economy and to improve sustainability and urban resilience. Thus, from the City Council, and in collaboration with research centers, private sector, and civil society organizations, an open call will be made for projects that pursue these two objectives, with the only condition that the impact for a more resilient and inclusive city is real and measurable. With 500,000 euros, 80% of the winning projects that do not exceed 100,000 euros each, and that are carried out in a maximum of 12 months, will subsidize. In collaboration with the city's innovation ecosystem, technical support will be given for the implementation of the project at the center. And with this, we are promoting a model of urban innovation that is open, plural, and multidisciplinary, places citizens at the center, as we believe, in general, the digital transition that comes after COVID should be. Evidently, as I said at the beginning, the goal is to achieve a recovery that will allow us to transition to a greener, more inclusive, resilient city model. And that entails the double dimension of digitalization, but also of sustainability, which is what the Commissioner for the 2030 Agenda will now explain. So, Miquel, over to you.
Thank you, Laia. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. And well, as you have heard and seen, Laia has explained it, that we are deploying a battery of solutions to reduce the impact of the pandemic and prepare the city for this new normality. However, on top of this set of solutions, we are also, but at the same time, willing to prepare the city for future pandemics or future shocks. We have a vision, and a vision to become a globally sustainable city. And when we talk about globally sustainable, we think about 3 levels of sustainability. Of course, the environmental one, willing to mitigate the climate change, but also the economic one, to have a more resilient industry that will be better prepared for future shocks, but also at the social level, to have the will to guarantee that we don't leave no one behind. As you can see, when we talk about this globally sustainable city, the framework that we have is the SDGs, is the Sustainable Development Goals. It's the framework that allow us to reach, or we hope that will allow us to reach this new city by 2030. So how we will become a globally sustainable city? Basically through 3 pillars. The first one, of course, is the 2030 Agenda, and basically by implementing this 2030 Agenda in Barcelona. The second one, it's what is called the Green New Deal. And in terms of Green New Deal, Barcelona has a Barcelona Green Deal, a Barcelona plan, a new economic plan, willing to reach this new economy. But if we want to reach the 2030 Agenda, and if we want to deploy the Green New Deal, we know that we need a third pillar, and it's partnerships. Partnership between the public sector and the private sector, and private sector understood not only as firms, not only as companies, but also as NGOs and citizens. So this is the way we want to implement this agenda, this strategy. And in terms of implementing the 2030 Agenda, what we are doing on the first set of actions has been to localize the 2030 Agenda for Barcelona. That means that we have analyzed not only the 17 goals, but also the 169 targets that are below the goals. And we have seen that 77% of these targets, Barcelona has something to say. Barcelona as a city, the city council, but also the city, has the capacity to impact on these targets. So we have adapted these targets that are designed at the national level to the local level, to our reality. From here, and this localization will be approved by after summer, we will be able to evaluate where we are. How far are we from the goals we have implemented for Barcelona, we have decided for Barcelona. And seeing this gap, we will be able to prioritize. And by prioritizing, we'll be able to decide which policies have to be on top of others. And another thing that will be very important will be to engage the city, because we understand that the 2030 Agenda is not it's not an agenda of the city council, but it's an agenda of the city and all the stakeholders. And on that sense, we right now have an academic advisory board with 30 main academics that are helping us to define the agenda, but also we will create the 2030 Agenda boost table, where all the stakeholders will be able to suggest how we can reach this agenda. Also, we will need to implement innovative solutions, by what we call the 2030 Innovation Challenge. Here what we see is that we need to define new ways to implement policies if we want to reach these goals by 2030. And of course, we will need to be supervising the achievement of the agenda during all these years. The second pillar is what we call Barcelona Green Deal that you can see in the next slide. This Barcelona Green Deal is a new economic plan for the next decade that we want to change more than change, we want to enhance the economic sectors that we know that can be more resilient in front of future crises and can create a more added value to the city. Therefore, we are trying to prioritize the retention and creation of talent and also enhancing specific sectors such as the digital one and the green one. How we do that? Basically, by improving their competitiveness, and from our side as a city council, we will implement several solutions such as the Easy Barcelona or the Zero Tax Plan, where for the starting companies there will be free of taxes for the first year, and also we are getting an agreement between all the trade unions and the socioeconomic stakeholders to guarantee the quality of employment and a long living learning system for all of us. And finally, by implementing what we have called Barcelona Get Sustainable Fund. That is a fund to improve the energy efficiency of housing and facilities and generate jobs. Specifically, this fund that you can see in the next slide, the goal of this fund is to boost the production of local renewable energy and to improve the refurbishment of buildings to reduce energy consumption. To do that in a city, in a society after the COVID crisis, we understand that we need really a public-private partnership. And we understand that we have to create a public-private fund where from our side, from the city council side, we compromise to put 50 million euros to reach these goals. From the private sector, we hope to reach more than 50 million euros, and the conversations that we are having with the private sector are very positive, and we know that they are willing a lot to implement. As far as I know, we're talking that maybe we can reach 4 more times what we are suggesting from our side, but we will see. And the important thing of this fund is that this fund will contract companies that they will invest in photovoltaic panels and in retrofitting buildings. This is very important because what we suggest in this fund is that the owners, the dwellers of the buildings, the owners of the buildings will not invest in these photovoltaic solutions or in retrofitting. It will be the companies that the fund will contract that will do all the investment. And thanks to the energy savings, they will recover the investment they have invested. So this is a very, I would say, the win-win-win solution, three levels of win solution, because from our side, from the city level, what we can do here is we are enhancing this what we call solar economy. We are offering to the private sector in a moment of crisis a stimulus to recover. And the other thing, and I think it's more important than the two others, is that we're offering citizens a solution to become a more greener city, but in a moment that people are, I would say, maybe the word is not afraid, but they have the uncertainty about what will be the future. So their capacity to invest is very low. So we have to give them solutions that are feasible for them. And I think that this fund, it's basically the specific solution. I think that what we have shown together with Laia now, it's that we are working at the short term with trying to give immediate solutions and immediate solutions with all the consensus, thanks to this Barcelona pact, with all the stakeholders of the city, but without forgetting the long term, because we need to guarantee a future for the generations to come, and we have to work immediately, but also without forgetting that the future is here and we have to act to reach it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laia and Miquel. If you could stop sharing the screen, we will now share some of the cartoon we received from our cartoonists, which focus very much on this idea of digitalization and the opportunities and the challenge that come with digitalization. So I'm going to first open my video and then share my screen. This is the first cartoon. I think the message is clear. And a little bit more humor in our second cartoon, but still raising interesting questions about many of the applications that are being discussed around the world and the debate about privacy. Again, for those who join us today, these cartoons are free for you to use. They're prepared by the cartoon collections, and you can use them as long as you make reference to the cities on the front line as the source of the cartoon. So thank you very much. Lauren, I pass the screen to you to ask the first question.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you to Laia and to Miquel for your first interventions there. We're coming back to you as I see the number of questions as already piling up in the chat. But before we do that, and in connection with the cartoons we just saw, and particularly the one about digital divide, so many of the questions about the recovery have come down to equity. And both of you addressed this in your comments as well, and how we look at achieving multiple benefits with these new investments in recovery. And so I wanted to open it up first with a question to Ares, who is on the line, who is our Chief Resilience Officer from Barcelona. If you could speak to how these presentations that we saw today connect with the resilience strategy for the city. If you could speak to that, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we here in Barcelona, we've been working in resilience for around 10 years now, and we began the work as a response to a series of crises very connected with the infrastructures and urban services of the city. We had a very severe drought, also a blackout event that left a big part of the city with a power supply for almost 3 days. And resilience was a response to all these crises, what we needed to do. So it had a very practical approach to implementation of risk reduction projects in the area of infrastructure and urban services. And from there, the program evolved, and we understood that resilience was a much broader concept, and that there were a lot of other vulnerabilities that needed to be addressed in the economic area, also the social one, the climatic one. And from there, the office has evolved and the program has evolved. And we've been also integrated in the resilience strategy, the climate plan and the climate, the climate emergency declaration. And now we were working on the resilience, the social part of the resilience. So more addressed at the social and economic vulnerabilities, which now as a result of the heat of the COVID crisis, also we need to readdress the priorities of the city. In some cases have changed, also the budget has changed. So we are now realigning the actions. Some of the things that we did before we want to maintain, but others In some cases, we find opportunities for transformations, for instance, in the public space, in terms of more sustainable mobility and wind space for pedestrians and also for sustainable transport models. And all these are issues that we are working on the plan and the strategy. So now we are in the process of aligning with realigning with these new priorities and all these changes that the crisis of the COVID has posed on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Ares. I am choosing a question in the list from Tembinkosi Singada, and a reminder that we really have viewers from around the world. Thank you very much. And this is a very concrete question for you, Laia and Miquel, probably. We've talked a lot in your presentation. You've really talked about the aspirations towards digitalization. Tembinkosi is asking, what concrete action are you envisaging? What do you put into a digitalization plan? What does it consist of? If you already have concrete idea, can you please share with us?
Okay, I think that Laia has explained a little bit, but I would like to when we talk about digitalization, we see it in three levels. First, we need to address the digital divide. So that means that we need to really detect where in the working level, but also in the social and educational level, how to reduce this digital divide. This is the first thing, and this is very important because in this new normality, we don't know a lot of things, but what we know is that digital will have more presence than before. Together with this, we have to promote urban innovation. And when we talk about urban innovation, this means that we need to prepare the city to be more digital, but that means that on the side of the local authority, we need to have the infrastructure to allow the city to boost and to move to more economic, a more digital economy. And of course, when we move to a more digital economy, as we have explained it, we have to have some solutions, some tax solutions, but also some ways to help the entrepreneurs of the digital economy to boost and also to be more connected with the research centers and the rest of the more, let's say, classical economy. And finally, what we have to do, is to help the more traditional economy, such as the retail sector, to move to the local retail sector, to move to this digital economy.
Laia, I don't know if you want to add to this.
My microphone was no, I actually agree with what Miquel told. I think we have all experienced the importance of digital divide, of having digital divide in our society during the pandemic, and that has made us very, very clear that this has to be a priority for a municipal government. I would say for a municipal government because we are the closest to the people, but it's very relevant not just to guarantee rights, which is important enough to take this priority as one of the most important ones in the future and now. But at the same time, because most of the municipal services depend on the capacity to use technology. So it's not I think probably for us, the teams that were working with digital divide and the digital transition, we already know that we had a priority here. Sorry, but now with the pandemic, everyone is aware that the importance of this priority, this policy. And I think this should at least help us to prioritize better for the future. Even if we have, and I hope so, we don't have a situation like the one we lived the last month. We have to be prepared. And teleworking is just a little part of this, very little part of this. Studying is one of the most critical areas, education sector, because there in the education sector and the capacity and fact of being able to use technology to go on in your studies during a lockdown like the one we lived is the basis for a society which wants to be equal. The basis. If we don't find a solution for that, we have a real problem, not for the next years, but for the future, in capital letters.
Thank you, Laia. It's a very good reminder from what you said and also what Miquel said about the nature of these plans, right? You can have the right hardware, but if you don't have the right capacities, if you don't have the right software and the people part of this right, then having the services online or having high-speed internet accessible won't actually help you to accomplish the goals that you might have, in particular in terms of equity. I'm going to turn us in a slightly different track because we have the results from our poll, which asked the group of participants, what should cities focus on first or more so when they're responding to this crisis? You know, economic diversification was one choice, digitization, greener cities, and strengthening public services. And we have some slight majority for participants interested in the green cities plus digital piece of this. And so some specific questions come about. How has the pandemic and the efforts that you described really impacted the current plans you have for sustainability and specifically climate change? Has this accelerated those goals in measurable ways? Is it too soon to tell? And specifically around things like private transport and mobility, which I think each of you touched on. What's the situation now in those conversations? Are they much more ambitious than they were before?
Thank you, Lauren. I would say that we don't have, well, we have the KPIs of the reduction of mobility and therefore of pollution in this month, right? But I would say it's quite too soon to see the real impact. What we've seen is that our green agenda is still there. And I would say even more than the green agenda. If we go to the 2030 agenda, that I know that it's bigger than the green agenda, even that sometimes we think about 2030 agenda only on the green one. The very good thing of this crisis is that all the challenges that we have with this crisis, we already knew it. We already have it in our agendas, in the green one, in the 2030 agenda, in the social one. The only thing is that we have changed the priorities. Maybe some of the goals, some of the targets were in our calendar were like more reduced and more on and now they have just put on the top. That's one thing. The other thing is about mobility at itself. What we've seen is that we have we had an experiment during this month, that, cities without cars, and now what we are trying is that we're trying to adapt the city, adapt the transportation to this new reality. And basically, the big challenge here is in public transport. The big challenge, because we know that the more sustainable tool in terms of transport is massive transport. We can, of course, we can use a bicycle, we can go walking, and we can use the private car. We should not use it, but we know that the big solution is the public transport. So here, what we're doing right now is to reduce the curve of the demand of transport. It's trying to make feasible that everyone can use the public transport, knowing that we need to have this, in this new normality, we have to have this more wealth security zones. So we're working on that point. Of course, we're putting some other things, but I think this will be the more significant change in our policies in terms of green, and it's that we need to reinforce the public transport in this new reality, new normality.
I'll the next question from Manish.
I think that Laia, maybe
Laia,
no?
do you want to add to this?
It's just to add a message, and we have to work in the direction that Miquel underlined, having another challenge, which is how we can recover trust in the fact that we use public transport or any other. So the fact that being a lot of people in the same place at the same time. But I think this is a question of time, and this challenge is very, very important because there is no alternative, at least for a greener solution. And I think we can't avoid this debate, this discussion, but we have to be very clear in this. We must trust in public transport.
Thank you, Laia. And Miquel, actually, this is a very good segue to Manish Thackeray's question. Manish says, well, the tourism season is around the corner. Barcelona is world famous, so they're likely to get a significant amount of visitors. The question is, what are your biggest fear and maybe your biggest hope from the tourism season? And are you in fact preparing for a second wave? How do you plan to handle the upcoming tourism season?
Thank you, Francis. I would say that, of course, the major fear it's the reduction of tourism, not because of the tourism itself, because what it represents in the city, the number of people you know, maybe you don't know, but there's in a lot of tourist cities such as Barcelona, such as Venice, such as Paris, there's always a debate about if we want tourists or not. Now I think that the debate is not this. The debate is how we can keep the workers, how can we keep the companies, how we keep the economy without the tourists. And not that doesn't mean that, of course, we have to move to a more resilient economy, as I have said before. But this is the main fear: how we can retain the sector, how we can retain the workers of the sector. so this is the reality, and to do that, we are preparing a very different campaigns to try to keep local tourists. When we talk about local tourists, it's about ourselves, but also tourists from the rest of Spain, and hopefully from Europe, as the border are opening in a few days. And also we are working together with the cultural sector. We're working together with them to give solutions to make more attractive and give facilities to consumers, to citizens, to consume public cultural events. Cultural events that will be more small, but as they will be more small, they will be more expensive. So we're trying to give this solution. And the third thing that I think that is very important is that we're helping the tourist sector to become COVID-free, meaning that to together define how the hotels, how the restaurants, how the places can guarantee they are COVID-free. So for the people to come, they can feel more secure and comfortable to be in our city. And last, I would say there is an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to move to reinforce tourism based on a higher level tourism, where we can have a better tourist, meaning people that really engage with the city, share their knowledge with us, and not only come but stay and retain the city. I think this is the future that we have to think about tourism in Barcelona.
Just to mention two ideas that Miguel already, but I think in the short term we have to focus on internal tourism. There is no alternative, considering internal the way that Miquel explained. And in the long term, probably it's tackling the old debate, the old discussion about quantity and quality. So, in this sense, I said before that this is an opportunity to rethink our model, and I think we can improve the tourism model that we have, considering the opportunity that this crisis gives us.
We have a bit of a follow-on question on tourism, but also something that relates to what you spoke about, Aris, in terms of resilient people and the social cohesion. And this is a question from Riza Andre, and she said, you know, Barcelona has always been a city that attracts visitors, not just for what the city is, but also who the city is, and wanting to be around the people of Barcelona and their energy. So what is the thinking about how to address this element in an age of social distancing? And, you know, on a related note, in terms of the digitalization strategies and these tools, how do you maintain not just people's access to services, but people's access to community and their sense of social cohesion?
Yeah, well, I think.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
Aris,
go
yes.
ahead, Miquel.
Okay, thank you, Aris. Just two things regarding. It's very nice to see to hear about what and who the city is. This difference. So I would say on this wheel to leave the city, right? When you come, you just don't only see the city, but you leave it. We are working, as I said, with the cultural sector to guarantee that the shows, the events that we will have in Barcelona will be secure in terms of COVID-free, that we are helping the sector to make it easier to the public to come to their events. And there's another thing, regarding the digital. We need to use the digital tools, the digital knowledge to make the urban space more secure, to make it more secure, of course, guaranteeing all the confidentiality of the use of data, but we're not talking about controlling people. We're talking about guaranteeing that the space is secure, that if there's something wrong in terms of someone with infection, we should be able to have the traceability to know where is this person, where is this person? No, where he or she was, and from here to help the rest of the city. The important thing is the feeling, to feel secure. And we have to do it together through partnerships between the public sector and the private sector, trying to find agreements to work together to make more attractive the city, but also by using technology to do this, to make this feeling, to improve it.
Iris, over to you.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, maybe I think Barcelona is known for being a very lively city. We like to gather together. I mean, it's part of the character and the charm, I think, of the city. And I hope we will need to live with the virus for a few years. So we will probably, in the meantime, need to change the formats, to change the way we do things. Maybe we won't be able to gather in such big groups, keep the social distance, but this doesn't mean we need to stop the activity, or we need to stop being connected. So I think also another key element will and linked with the digital transformation is maybe thinking of new formats of doing things we do now, and hopefully in a few years maybe we will be able to recover this livelihood in the public space without worrying about the distances and so on. But in the meantime, I think it is important to think also of new formats.
Thank you, Iris, and thank you, Miquel. It's my unfortunate job to start to close down this session. And as I do that, I really want to express our sincere thanks to you, to Laia, to Miquel, to Iris for spending this evening or your afternoon with us and with the speaker series audience. The plans that you have laid out for Barcelona are very ambitious and exciting to see the way you are incentivizing this kind of progress in recovery. So thank you for sharing that. I do want to also let the audience know that next week we will be reconvening again on this day, but at a slightly different time, 1 hour later at 9:30. We will be talking about metropolitan resilience and how we rethink public spaces. So it's a very exciting lineup. We'll have Octavio de Varga, who's joining us from Metropolis, and also we will have someone from the metro region of Guadalajara. So really hope that you can join us for that presentation. And again, thank you to our wonderful speakers this evening. Thanks also to the World Bank and to everyone who's joined us on the phone or online tonight. Hope that you have a very safe and healthy week. Take care.